How are all of you lovely people doing today? My name is John, and welcome to another fantastic episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A. This is a series where I take your questions about the zombie storyline and I answer them. Whether it's a big, a small, or a simple question, I'm always happy to take them on. You can either leave your questions down below or tweet me at JohnnyJ25. Without further ado, let's begin. Today's episode will begin with a question from the Mr. Toxic Z, who asks, John, who is Nikolai talking about in the Garad Crovey cutscene? You're referring to this scene right here. Let's take a look and analyze it.
But know this, in my heart, I share the same pain as you. The pain that you have buried and blurred beneath an alcohol-fueled haze. Yes, the pain of your own memory. You loved and you lost. Everything else has been delusional fantasy that distance you from painful truth. You know what I speak of. You remember, before the bombs fell, before she was taken from us. Some things are forgotten for a reason!
This scene found itself sparking a lot of debate. Nikolai talks about loving and losing, and he also refers to this person as she, and apparently they lost this person when the bombs began to fall. Now there was some debate, because Nikolai is a notorious womanizer who supposedly had several wives. In previous games, he goes on and on about all his different wives and how he ended up murdering a majority of them. So, when people look at this scene, they go, there's no way Nikolai is talking about a woman. There's no way he can get hung up on such a girl because he's such a notorious womanizer. People look at this and they say he's talking about the city of Stalingrad, because people do refer to their cities with a feminine pronoun, so maybe that is the case. And Nikolai definitely lost something important to him. He talks about it all throughout Black Ops 3. I mean, listen to his Fireside Memories trailer.
It is said that it is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. I feel differently.
It's definitely clear that whoever he lost, or whatever he lost, hit him very hard. The debate was always staged between his city and another woman. Some people suggested his wife, but then there were other dissenting voices that maybe said he lost his mother, or potentially a sister or a daughter if he hypothetically had one of them. But we never really knew about them, and that's always where the debate was, until Revelations, when Dr. Monty explicitly states that it was the loss of his wife that sent him spiraling down a path of alcoholism.
Nikolai loved his wife. He was never the same after she died.
And now we get to better understand the torment that surrounds Nikolai. He always talked about loving and losing. He always talked about the pain within his heart. And it's because of the loss of his wife. He loved his wife dearly, and as a result, he began wallowing away with alcohol. And this is most likely why Nikolai is such an incoherent drunk in all of the other Call of Duties. It's because this Nikolai never found a way to really cope with the death of his wife like Nikolai 2.0 has. He found a way to embrace his grief. However, the other Nikolais had not, unfortunately, and that's the tragedy of Nikolai. And when he discusses his other wives, some people suggest that maybe he's being delusional, or maybe it's a mechanism in order for him to forget about the loss of his wife. Some people suggest that all these previous wives don't actually exist. Now this, of course, goes against his World at War bio, which suggested that he married several people in an effort to climb the political ladder. We're not exactly sure. Maybe the Nikolai from different universes had a different life in which maybe he did have a series of many different wives. So it's hard to say for sure. Either way, in this scene, they're both talking about the death of their first wife. Moving on, we're now going to look at a question from Blood Enigma 02, who asked, are the radios from another reality to the maps we play? I thought this would be a good question to discuss because sometimes the radios don't make sense. They are paradoxical in a way and can be confusing, and the way I imagine radios, I break them down into 3 separate categories, and I thought I would take the time to explain that and allow you guys to understand how they make sense in the context of the story. The first type of radio I'd like to talk about are the original radios. These are radios that happened in the past and belong in the universe that they currently reside in. These are classic radios such as the original DeRees radios, which depict events that happen in the past. These are usually people writing or speaking logs and then also recording what's going on in the background. We also have radios that are a result of the cycle. Now, these are the ones that almost seem paradoxical. For example, the radios from some of our characters on the Giant. Tank Dempsey leaves radios on the Giant. However, it doesn't make sense for them to be there. How could he have left a radio there if he had not yet been there? And that's where the paradox lies. And what happens is that our characters are in this infinite cycle. They've repeated this loop many different times, and over the course of the many different cycles, they have at some point left radios, and these radios for some reason are preserved when the cycle repeats itself. So when our characters find themselves back on the Giant, they can find radios that previous versions of themselves have already left. That's what's going on with some of the radios, the ones that almost seem like they shouldn't be there. There's also other radios that are from different realities. These are radios such as the ones on Revelations that have been displaced through time and space. They belong in a different universe, but because Revelations is this mishmash of many different universes thrown into one, when those locations were moved, the radios were moved with it. This is why on a map like Revelations we have radios from Sarah Michelle Gellar, Johnny Banana, and Robert McNamara. It would seem strange to have them ensembled all together, but when you imagine that this place is a cluster of many different universes, it almost starts to work. Now, some people could make the suggestion that maybe other radios are actually from other universes displaced out of time, and you could, I suppose, make that argument, and it'd be a very difficult argument to argue against. However, generally, when they fit into the context of the area, when they're either depicting events that clearly had already happened in that area or seem to fit with the setting, then I don't imagine they have been displaced through time and space. And most of the radios are radios that have been specifically left for other people to find or were created and then left there and then eventually discovered by our characters in the future. Today's episode will end with a question from Alex on Twitter, who asks, what bloody machine are they destroying and why? The bloody machine that they're referring to is the teleporter that is found in the basement of Maxis's home. We can see them destroy the machine at the beginning of the Revelations prologue. Monty even says, you got rid of that bloody machine, and the bloody machine is the teleporter. The teleporter, in many ways, is the root of all of the problems, and we see Dr. Monty actually explain this in one of the Revelations wisps.
In the beginning, and believe me, there was a beginning, everything was in its proper place. Time was linear, just as it should be. But a little thing called element 115 changed all that. Especially when, what was it again? Oh, yes, when group 935 came along. Once they started messing around with it, they buggered everything up. 115 shouldn't even exist in your dimension. But nonetheless, here we are. Bloody teleporters. Once element 115 came along, the Apothecons weren't far behind. Have I mentioned them yet?
He says it right there. Bloody teleporters. He hates the teleporters. They're in a way the catalyst for all of this, all of the shit that has arisen. Teleportation, this idea of moving objects through time and space, 115 displacement, was a thing developed by the Keepers. Now the Keepers, some of them turned into Apothecons, so this was something that was used by both the Keepers and the Apothecons. And when we create our own teleporters, what we're doing is taking advantage of the systems and things they've created that allowed teleportation to happen, the ripples through time and space. That's why our characters are able to teleport and build teleportations. We're basically building off the backs of giants. These giants, of course, being the Keepers and the Apothecons. And what we need to do is prevent things from entering Monty's perfect world. We need to stop any corruption from seeking through, because we're using Apothicon and Keeper channels, essentially, and this can allow the Keepers and the Apothicons to slip into our realm, and we want the Apothicons to stay out. That's how the Apothicons are able to really get in. They take advantage of the fact that we've opened up gateways and channels with things such as teleportation, and in Monty's perfect world, we want to prevent any sort of corruption. So by destroying the teleporter, that bloody machine, we have lessened the likelihood that there would be any sort of tainting within this universe. Now, of course, it's already kind of pointless because the Shadow Man entered through with our characters because he was in the summoning key, but Monty didn't know that at the time. They thought that by destroying the teleporter, they would prevent any sort of beings or creatures that could possibly taint this universe from entering. That's what's going on there when they destroy that bloody machine. It's the teleporters. They're the problem. That's going to wrap things up for this episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A. If you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a like, possibly subscribe for more. I upload a new episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A every week, and if you enjoyed this one, I'm sure you'll enjoy the next one. I'm going to go, though. Have a great day, and bye.